What's up, Cringeverse? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Sal, aka Cringe Miku, and today, just like every day, we're going to talk about whatever I want. And today, I want to talk about digital fashion. Is it digital? Is it fashion? I don't know. Time will tell. But I'm really excited that you all are here, and I'm really excited to talk about this. I've wanted to talk about this for a while, and I really appreciate everyone being so supportive of my transition into long-form content. I'm going to keep the Instagram going, obviously, but I've been getting a lot more positive reception over here, and I think it's because this content is inherently less hateful than the Instagram stuff, so I'm hoping to kind of work on the YouTube channel a bit more. So let's just jump into digital fashion with a simple question. Does anyone remember Minecraft? Of course you do. For me and my sister in like 2010, that was the only thing we're doing after school. Around like 2012 or so, there started being these massive multiplayer servers where you could do a bunch of different stuff. They would have like all these different portals, these different worlds with different rules. Like there was factions, there was capture the flag, there was just straight up survival worlds. And of course, there was the creative world. That was the one my sister and I always hung out on because, you know, the only thing more fun than building creatively in Minecraft is doing it surrounded by other people in a world that could be deleted at any time. So we would always go onto the creative world and it would just be like a vast expanse of thousands of just empty grass plots, and you would claim one and you would just build whatever you wanted on it. It was that simple. And something that we saw a lot, enjoyed a lot, were skin competitions. Now I know that sounds really weird, but it wasn't like a competition on who had the best skincare. It was a competition on who had the best Minecraft skin. Because much like any other multiplayer video game, Minecraft allowed you to customize your character model. But instead of games like Fortnite, where you customize the whole model at once, with Minecraft, you could edit pixel by pixel. So in a skin competition, everyone would line up, and whoever was hosting would pick a winner based on how much they liked their skin. And sure, most people would just download one from online, but some people would also make their own or edit existing ones. And it was really cool to see everyone's creativity. I think that was my first ever brush with the concept of digital fashion, the true and complete expression of oneself using a player model online. These days, skins are everywhere in basically every kind of video game, but they're a lot more controlled than the Wild West of Minecraft skins, where you could absolutely just set your skin to be a naked lady. That was pretty jarring for 10-year-old Sal. There's things like Sims 4 custom content houses, where they'll release like a fashion show every, I don't know, month or so. They'll release a collection. I love The Sims 4, so that's like my thing. But there's also things like Roblox Fashion Famous, Valorant, Fortnite all have different character customization options, and it's pretty standard fare actually that any multiplayer video game will have the option to customize your character. And I think there's a story to be told here about how the gaming world pioneered digital fashion, and how fashion evolved from the physical world to the gaming world to Web3 and the metaverse. And that's what we're going to talk about today, but we have to start from the very beginning. Chapter 1, Physical Fashion. So, fashion feeds off hype. Much like any trend cycle, it's basically whatever's being shown on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat, or back in the 2000s it was whatever's on TV or magazine covers, and back in the 80s it was whatever celebrities were wearing in the paper or the magazines, and you know, fashion feeds off of what people you find iconic are wearing and hyping. It's hype. It's a hype cycle. And luxury brands are the milkers of the hype. There is nothing that gets people hyped up more than luxury brands. And so I thought this would be a good place to start, to talk about how luxury brands have either played into the trends or stood the test of time and kept their own image over, you know, the trend cycle. And so I want to start by just listing out a few and talking about their aesthetic and their brand statement, and we're gonna have a good laugh at that, trust me. You'll see what I mean. So let's just get into it with Burberry.
Burberry's guiding principle is creativity opens spaces. It is a shared belief that through creativity, we can push boundaries and explore new possibilities for ourselves, our customers, and the communities interacting with our brand.
So Burberry is a classic British luxury brand from the 1850s, and they have stood the test of time by continually selling luxury items to upper middle class and upper class people. Their plaid print is now iconic. I mean, you see that print in the bottom left and you recognize that. That's the Burberry print. But instead of maintaining their luxurious look of these coats and colored items, they now plaster that print on any type of thing that they can put it on, including the top left, a baseball hat. It's pretty bad. It's really not my favorite, but that's just me. There's something that's kind of felt tacky about New Burberry. It's almost as if they're trying to become what Americans think British fashion is. Like, looking at the images on the bottom, it kind of just feels like a parody of British people to me. That's just my vision of it as someone who's lived in both America and England. But I can see the merit in this. It's just kind of, Burberry, I think, takes themselves very seriously and wants to be like a quiet luxury brand, but they've made that plaid print so iconic that when you see it, you know it's Burberry, and then you know whoever's wearing it is a hype beast. Burberry's not really for me, but I do respect their commitment to like classic neutrals and their commitment to British culture.
The combination of creativity and innovation is the foundation of our Maisons. This is what enables them to achieve the delicate balance needed to continually renew our offer, resolutely looking to the future while respecting their unique heritage.
Louis Vuitton puts their logo on everything. And I mean everything. And this is the true symbol of hype, is you see a celebrity wearing it, and you don't even have to think. You know what brand it is because it says right there on the jacket, on the dress, on the purse, on the damn cat. Louis Vuitton. And that drives me crazy. I think it's so annoying that they're like, the combination of creativity and innovation is the foundation of our Maisons. Like, no, there's nothing innovative about just doing the same thing over and over again. You're just putting the Louis Vuitton print on different things. It's just so annoying. I cannot stand Louis Vuitton. I think it's kind of tacky. But again, if this is your thing, just be aware that the image of how Louis Vuitton comes across is as something that people wear because it's hyped.
Chanel is first and foremost about creation. It's also about being a profoundly human-driven company committed to creating long-term value for the brand and for society.
Chanel is my favorite of the luxury brands, and that might be just because I'm into K-pop lately and I really like Blackpink. That's Jennie on the top right wearing Chanel. I like Chanel because it's a woman-owned brand and it creates these like kind of timeless feminine looks, but again, they are recognizable as Chanel, and I think that they do a slightly better job than Burberry because you have to look at the looks for a second to realize they're Chanel. Like, it's not just the print that makes it Chanel, but they are very distinct, and to an extent they are hyped, and it does come with a bit of a culture of like flexing, like kind of like old money and stuff. I think that's why Chanel is so popular right now, is because old money is in right now. Same with Burberry.
With a thoughtful and pioneering vision, the Prada Group is a global leader in luxury. By being drivers of change, we offer an unconventional dialogue and interpretation of the contemporary as expression of our way of doing business for the planet, people, and culture.
Then there's Prada. So Prada's kind of the black sheep of the 5 brands that I've picked because their obsession with branding is so much less than the other brands. Like, they're not really so much into putting Prada on every single item. But I literally just Googled like top luxury brands and Prada was up there. And I think that Prada actually does make an honest effort to push the boundaries of fashion. And for that, I very much respect them. Like, those coats on the top right are absurd and unwearable, but they are fashion. I will give them that. They are unique and they are artsy. And I think Prada's definitely the most artsy of the fashion brands. And I don't really see hype beasts going for Prada a whole lot. But then on the other end of the spectrum,
Gucci represents the pinnacle of Italian artisanal excellence, and its designs are unsurpassed for their quality and attention to detail. Following the house's centenary, Gucci continues to redefine luxury while celebrating creativity and innovation through its collections.
That's right, folks. Gucci is the pinnacle of Italian artisanal excellence. I mean, you can't make this up. That is actually their brand statement. I mean, look at that shirt on the top left. What is that? Like, have you ever heard the old adage, money talks but wealth whispers? When you're wearing a brand like Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Burberry, or even Chanel, you want people to know that you're rich. Whereas people who are actually wealthy want you to think that they're just normal people and they wear whatever is comfortable for them rather than plastering Gucci all over themselves. And I can't help but think of Gucci as just kind of something that people wear when they want you to think they're rich, but they're not actually rich. And to me, these clothes just come off very like attention seeking. But again, these are just my personal perceptions of the brands. But I think it's important that we talk about like the perception that people have of the fashion world, and particularly the high-end fashion world. Because that's kind of what's been digital fashion lately, is these high-end brands have been getting into it, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk quickly about luxury brands that are not hyped anymore. And the two brands that came to mind for me were Michael Kors and Hugo Boss. So those two brands are still very much active today, and they're still selling clothes, but unlike Chanel, Burberry, Gucci, they're not in the public eye anymore because of how the trends have shifted. Right now, the trend is on like being a hype beast and showing off what clothes you're wearing, and also like old money, like British aesthetic. And so that's why Burberry and Chanel in particular are very popular right now, because they're just what's trendy. And what was trendy in like the 2010s was Hugo Boss and Michael Kors. And I find it so respectable that those brands have not sacrificed their integrity just because they're not trendy anymore. Like, they're not trying to be trendy, they're trying to be Hugo Boss and Michael Kors. And I think that that's what true luxury fashion is a timeless brand and a classic look, and something that people will always go back to, like the loyal customers will always go back there. And so I think that it's important that these brands are mentioned, because not all luxury fashion is truly luxury. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is it really luxury fashion if they're willing to sacrifice their image for a trend? Now, time will tell if Chanel and Burberry will sacrifice their image for a trend, but Burberry's already doing it. I mean, you and I both saw that hat in the top left. What was going on there? That was not classic British fashion. That was not pushing boundaries. That was just bad. So I just want y'all to think about that as we move on to the next section here. So now that we've talked about luxury brands, I kind of want to talk about the other end of that spectrum, which is fast fashion. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, fast fashion is any cheap, quickly produced clothing that is made mostly just to satisfy a fleeting trend, and the quality is just terrible on most of this stuff. So I've got a few of the brands on the screen that make fast fashion, but there are plenty, and I don't want to come out here and tell you what to buy and what not to buy. And I'm not here to shame anybody whose only option is fast fashion, because it is the most affordable clothing on the market right now, especially since thrifting has become so expensive lately. And so I don't blame you if this is what you're doing to get by. However, if you are one of those influencers who buys massive bags of this stuff just to satisfy a trend and then moves on to the next thing and throws all that stuff away, that's the problem. And so it's kind of why I want to talk about a few of the most iconic fast fashion trends from the last 5 years. So on the left here, we have a woman who is dressed in the mob wife aesthetic. The pinnacle of the mob wife aesthetic was these faux fur coats, because it was kind of the trend to be like, I don't want to say like trashy, but it was kind of like gaudy clothing. And so it was like these big printed faux fur coats and like big pearls, big glasses, like sunglasses. You were kind of trying to look like a mobster's wife, and he was giving you all his money, and you were buying this ridiculous stuff because you were rich. And so these faux fur coats were produced in bulk by these fast fashion companies, Shein, ASOS, and influencers, and people bought them. And I haven't seen anybody wearing a faux fur coat in like 2 years because the mob wife thing is gone. And I kind of shudder a little bit when I think about where all of that fabric and faux fur ended up, because it's probably landfills. And I know that not everybody throws away their fast fashion clothing, but I don't really see anybody talking about faux fur coats anymore. And it's just kind of, I don't know, I think it's so far out, and it's kind of like a weird fashion item rather than being something timeless. And so I don't think a lot of people have added their faux fur coats to their capsule wardrobe. I think they're just gone. And so the thing in the middle here is a bucket hat. These were the thing in like the early 2020s, and it's kind of the late 2010s too, because it was kind of a tail end Visco girl thing. And they were super in, and I haven't seen anyone wearing any bucket hats in a long time. I still have one, because it's from my sorority and I can't bear to throw it away. But yeah, I mean, they were super in, and now nobody wears them anymore. We're back to baseball caps, you know, because that's more of like a timeless fashion item, and this is more something trendy. And so it's kind of this fast fashion kind of promotes going outside of getting a capsule wardrobe that you're gonna wear forever, and promotes getting things that you're only gonna wear for a trend. And same with these pants on the right here. These are from like last year when the 60s were really trendy. And so these are kind of like 60s, 70s style checkered pants. Those were so in last year, and I haven't seen anyone wearing them this year. I mean, look, I'm not a fashion girly, but I do get those a lot on my feed because I like to see what's going on, and I haven't seen them in a long time. We're back to jeans now. Get with the times, you know? But fast fashion promotes this idea of buying something just for a trend and then getting rid of it because you only bought it for like $10 in the first place. And so you don't really feel a lot of guilt about just getting rid of it, even though this is super bad for the environment. And fast fashion is also problematic because it often comes from harmful labor practices, underpaid workers, overworked workers, that sort of stuff. And it's also super bad for the environment because a lot of it is imported from very far away, and it's often thrown away after it's used. So luxury fashion, it's usually slightly more ethically made than fast fashion, but it's absurdly expensive. And fast fashion, it's unethically made and often unethically consumed, but it's very cheap. So what is there in the middle ground? Is there anything out there that is both somewhat priced reasonably, but also ethically made? Well, the problem is that there isn't really any middle ground on the market. Since it takes time to make clothing sustainably, ethical brands are often really behind on like hype and trends, and they just don't sell as much because they're behind and they can't catch up, and ultimately they go out. The only brands that survive are the brands that can keep up with the trends, like fast fashion brands, or brands that charge so much for their clothing that they're fine. So that kind of brings us though to my third topic when it comes to physical fashion, which is streetwear. So streetwear is a very interesting middle ground, and it's kind of always something I've wanted to talk about because it kind of lives on this plane in between hype beast fashion, but also like personal style. And I think the definition of streetwear can be super broad, but the main focus from what I found in my research was clothing that is both comfortable and trendy. So the first thing that comes to mind for me with streetwear is, unfortunately, brands like Supreme, who are incredibly centered around hype and $100 t-shirts. I think the original goal of streetwear was to break out of the fashion cycle, wherein expensive clothes are bought just to flex how much money you have. But streetwear has unfortunately evolved into just a more subtle way of flexing than traditional luxury brands. Like, a Supreme t-shirt doesn't look like it costs $100, but if you know, you know. And I think the emphasis of streetwear used to be on like thrifting, and it used to be a bit more sustainable, but these days I feel like all I see is people wearing Stussy and Supreme and Vans. And I think that streetwear and its weird intersection between both ethical and affordable fashion is something that will ultimately be important in the next topic of this video. Chapter 2, Digital Fashion. Digital fashion started out as filters, actually. The first thing that came to mind for me was the Snapchat flower crown filter from the early 2010s. Y'all remember that, right? My best friend and I, growing up, we would spend every afternoon school bus ride seeing what filters were available on Snapchat that day, because I think they rotated, and then we would take selfies with every single one, because that was just what we did back then. And it was fun, but it really wasn't harmless, because those filters, while they did indeed put a flower crown or dog ears on your head, they also completely wiped any acne or marks off your skin, and some of them would even turn your eyes blue. I think for me, that was pretty harmful, as Snapchat was straight up sitting there and telling me to my face what's wrong with me. You could turn the filters on and off and see every little blemish that the smoothing feature corrected. And it was kind of upsetting sometimes, especially since I had a lot of issues with acne when I was like 13, 14. I just couldn't get rid of my acne. And it was really frustrating because then I would put on the Snapchat filter and there I was, my skin clear as day. And it was probably not the best thing for my mental health as a teenager. And Snapchat, unfortunately, still does this. I don't use it as much anymore because I'm in my 20s, but I've seen that it does still correct my face when I'm taking a selfie on it. But the other thing that these filters still do is they are still just as buggy as they were back in the early 2010s. I don't know how they haven't really fixed the tracking, especially now with like AI software available, but it clips, it glitches, it bugs. I mean, they're not great. And it's even worse if you have like a rounder face, because especially ones with like earrings, they just don't work. It's pretty bad. But keep all of that in mind, because this is all going to come kind of back when we talk about fashion and augmented reality. So just remember how bad Snapchat filters can be sometimes. So, In 2024, what is digital fashion? Well, I did a lot of comprehensive searches on Instagram, and ultimately I found 4 different categories of items: 3D renders, edited images, augmented reality, and metaverse avatars. So the first thing that came up when I looked at digital fashion was these 3D renders. Someone uses a tool like Blender, or more likely something more advanced, Blender's just the one I know, to model an outfit onto a 3D model, maybe a mannequin or something that more resembles a person. The outfits are usually really cool, and some of them would theoretically be able to exist, but they'd be very difficult to sew, while others could defy all known laws of physics. They're kind of awesome. I think it's interesting to see the modeling process, and a lot of creators choose to show like the intricacies of modeling these outfits, and I think it's cool that they're not like gatekeeping this skill. I think that this is how AR fashion kind of got started, as AR fashion is pretty similar to this, except instead of having a static 3D model that's only used for one shoot, it's being replaced with a real person who's walking around. But we'll get into that in a second, I promise. Edited images. So this is kind of a weird one, but virtual fashion can also exist in the sense that it's clothes that don't actually exist, but are edited onto a picture. So you go out and you take a picture of yourself wearing minimal or neutral clothing, and then you pay someone, or if you're a model, somebody pays you, to get edited into the digital outfit. Some of these look better than others, but I do like the idea, as it's largely independent artists and creatives doing this sort of thing. You can see on the left here, this person's earrings have been edited onto them, kind of in post, and you can see like they have a cool glowing effect on their skin. And then on the right, this woman's dress has been either digitally added or digitally altered. Augmented reality. I remember my first time with augmented reality, and I think all of you do too. Pokemon Go. You were all there in 2016. I remember catching my first Rattata in my living room, and then walking down the street to the nearest Pokestop to start collecting all the goods, like the eggs and stuff. And then there were all these funny stories that came out, people who were like walking around going after a rare Pokemon, and then they ended up like trespassing on someone's property. They were usually pretty funny, but sometimes I think people got arrested for it. But it was cool too how the Pokemon who would appear to be like standing on the ground, you could walk towards them. That's augmented reality. But how does fashion work there? It's pretty rough, honestly, but basically the idea is that you're wearing AR glasses and then you look at this other person and you see them wearing a virtual outfit. And the videos that I'm showing on screen are of a woman wearing AR fashion, and she's recording videos in it. It's super glitchy because it works kind of using the same principles as a Snapchat filter with like tracking. It just has a few more years of innovation. And it's weird because they're also like usually wearing clothes underneath. Like, you know, she goes out for the day and then films these videos while she's out, and so she's just also wearing a normal outfit underneath. It's strange. It's very strange. And that kind of brings me to the last media, which is metaverse avatars, which is an entirely digital fashion experience. The metaverse is not actually one place or one website. There are multiple metaverses. And much like the internet, it's a collection of places where you can interact with people, but instead of being on different sites, you're in a virtual space interacting with each other in a 3D world. And so your avatar, it's fully customizable, much like a video game, and they can wear NFT clothes, much like augmented reality fashion. There's a bit of overlap here with the 3D render thing I was telling you about, but you have to consider that those 3D renders stay largely posed in one scene and exist for one picture on the model, whereas a metaverse avatar walks around and interacts with the world. And it also must be able to be rendered on every computer viewing it, so the fashion has to be much more simplistic, but it also has to stand out, and so the results are very, very ugly. So what is the point of any of this? Well, it's the same as the point of fashion, right? It's artistic expression, and at least for the first two, it's just that. But the first two examples are sustainable, affordable, and accessible, and I like the ideas behind both of them, and I'm really happy that a lot of small artists have found a future there in creating these cool 3D renders and these cool edited pictures. It's neat. But for the last two, the augmented reality and metaverse avatars, there's a grift going on. Chapter 3, the ultimate grift. NFTs. What are they? Well, it's complicated, and that's by design. It's not your fault if you still don't get NFTs. They actually made them hard to understand on purpose, because the idea is that if it's complex, then it's important. And that is absolutely not true at all. They are complex by design, specifically to confuse people and keep people from realizing that they are actually just kind of a grift. They want you thinking that an NFT is just a money box, And it's actually so much worse than that. But let me try to explain this briefly for you. So I've got on the screen a comparison between a normal digital item and a non-fungible token, which is what NFT stands for. So I kind of use the song file as an example. So for a normal digital item, it would be a song file and there would be an infinite supply, and you could pay a flat fee, 99 cents or so, to buy it directly from the producer. And the transaction would be recorded both on your credit card and on the seller's transactions, and this file would be stored on your computer and you could listen to it whenever you wanted. And you would have it forever, and you paid your 99 cents, that's your song. Whereas with an NFT, there's a finite supply of them, and the price depends on demand. The whole idea of NFTs is you're creating this digital scarcity, and you're trying to create a demand for things because there's a finite supply of them. And so usually you buy an NFT from its previous owner. So in our example of a song, you would buy the song from a previous owner, and the transaction would be recorded on the blockchain. And then instead of having a local copy of this song, it would be stored on the blockchain as well. So every time you wanted to listen to the song, you would have to listen to it on the blockchain. So does that kind of make sense? The blockchain, by the way, is this really just huge ledger. It's just a log of transactions. It's like an activity log, kind of. And it's very expensive because most of them are super non-economically friendly. So how it works is every computer that uses the blockchain has to verify every purchase. And so it takes a ton of electricity, and it also takes a ton of time, which is why it's so expensive to do a transaction on it, because basically you're buying time to use the system to make your purchase. So blockchains and the NFTs that live on them are bad both economically because they're creating demand where there doesn't need to be and spiking the prices of things unnecessarily, and they're also terrible for the environment. I mean, these NFTs and cryptocurrencies and the people that buy and sell them, I've read that these systems of blockchains can use as much power as a developing nation. And instead of powering anything useful, it's just powering people's gambling addiction. I mean, it's bad. And so anyways, I think it's important that we're all aware of what NFTs are and why they're bad. They're very bad. And again, I do not want you to feel bad if you still don't get it. I studied computer science in college, and even I only have a loose grip on how the whole thing works. And so, again, it's complicated by design. You're not dumb if you don't get it. Nobody gets it. It's supposed to be really stupid. So, what do NFTs have to do with digital fashion? Well, like I said earlier, it's all about creating artificial scarcity. The idea is that, like physical fashion items, the person who owns an individual digital fashion item would be the only person with access to it. This in turn drives up the prices and makes this whole system even worse for the environment. And so the vision, though, of these people is that in a future time, we will all be living both in the physical and digital worlds by constantly wearing augmented reality glasses everywhere, and then when you're home, you live in a digital space. The hope is that whatever you're wearing through your AR glasses and on your metaverse avatar will be more important than what your physical body is wearing. But that's dystopian. We have enough problems in the real world. Why don't we work on solving those instead of covering up everything we don't want to see with augmented reality? And I can't help but think of how inaccessible the future will be. Virtual reality sickness is such a big problem that it even has its own Wikipedia page. Eye strains, headaches, nausea. Only people whose bodies are predisposed to AR will be able to handle it. On top of the problem of physical accessibility, this future will also be expensive, consumptive, and destructive. But in selling that future to the next victim, these people making AR and VR clothing and selling it more often are making money. They can sell you the NFT and then just mint a new one to sell to the next person. By the way, minting is the process in which an item or a coin is added to the blockchain. It usually costs money, usually in the form of whatever coin is native to the chain that the item is going to be on. So to mint an item, you must pay conversion fees to get the coin and then pay the minting fee.
But Sal,
You cry.
you just said that there are independent artists doing the render thing and the editing thing. Surely the augmented reality fashion world and the metaverse also have independent artists, no?
Yes, you're correct. But in order to sell their items on the blockchain, these artists have to mint them themselves. It's complicated, and like I said, there's several steps involved. But basically, they have to pay hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in any random coin to get their item on the blockchain. And then they just have to hope it sells for more than the cost to mint it and more than the cost of their time. So the real winners are whoever is selling the coin and the chain that the stuff is on. And the losers usually are small artists who find that there's basically no market for augmented reality fashion because most people just aren't interested. So that kind of brings me to my own creation, the hype cycle. Now, I didn't create the hype cycle, but I did create this diagram to better explain to you how this works. So coiners refers to anyone who's pushing this digital future. And step one is that the coiners convince artists that there is a vast open market wherein they can sell digital fashion and it's gonna fly off the shelves and they're gonna be the next big thing and they're being a part of this future and they're gonna be the early adapters and they're gonna be super rich. And so artists who don't know anything about, the metaverse or NFTs, because like I said, these things are inherently stupidly complicated. The artists buy the coins from the coiners in order to mint their digital items on the blockchain, and in doing that, they incur a transaction fee. It's kind of like how if you're converting from dollars to euros, you don't get exactly a perfect conversion because you have to pay whoever's doing the conversion for you. After that, the artist has to mint the item on the blockchain, incurring a minting fee, so then they spend all the coins they just bought. And then step 4 is that nobody wants to buy the item and the artist is left high and dry with no money for their work or expenses. Even if they do sell their item, it's often not enough to make up for the time that they spent creating the item or the minting fees, which can sometimes be hundreds or thousands of dollars. And then finally on step 5, the coiners point to these new items on the blockchain and maybe they sold, or maybe they can say, hey, look, this stuff is selling. And they can go to the next artist down the line and say, look, there's hype here. There's money to be made here. You want to get in on this. And that's the hype cycle. It restarts and it goes on forever. This was very much inspired by Folding Ideas, who talks a lot about this in his documentary Line Goes Up. But I feel like he didn't translate it to the digital fashion world, just the NFT world. And I'll talk a bit about the difference between those towards the end of this video, because NFTs are coming back. And they're coming back in a few years here, and it's really bad. But there's a few loose ends I need to tie up here for you first. So what did the luxury fashion houses at the beginning of this video have to do with anything? Well, this is going mainstream now. In 2023, last year, New York Fashion Week, which is one of the most iconic weeks in fashion, featured a variety of metaverse and digital fashion looks, done both through augmented reality and physical reality. You can see on the right here, these NFT looks have Bored Apes, I think those are CryptoPunks. They're bad. I mean, that's just, I kind of like the denim look in the middle, that's pretty cute, but why are there CryptoPunks on it? What's going on? I mean, you could have put literally anything else on it. Why are we doing this? And then on the top left here, we have the New York Fashion Week key, which unlocks show invites and products. Why couldn't we just sell the show invites and products? Because somebody used the hype cycle to get in with whoever puts together New York Fashion Week and pointed to those looks by those artists and said, hey, this is what's big right now. You want to get in on this. And somebody at New York Fashion Week fell for the grift. Furthermore, the Metaverse Fashion Week 2023 in Decentraland featured looks from Adidas, Tommy Hilfiger, and Dolce & Gabbana, among others. The looks were selling for dirt cheap though, as nobody wanted them. I'm looking here at this outfit called the Magic of Love. That coin on the top right of the black section of the screen is called mana, and 26 mana is about $12.33, which for those of you who are not in the United States is about the price of 2 Big Macs. And then we have a Dundas dress. Dundas is kind of a new fashion house. And we also have a Ben Bridge party dress. That price on it, by the way, is just like the max price, I think. When I clicked on it, it was, bidding was starting at like 1 mana or something. I mean, this is just, it's sad because clearly somebody went to the owners of all these brands and pointed to the hype cycle and said, there is money, you need to get in on this. And then it's just a 10-cent party dress. I mean, what are we doing here? And I mean, it's kind of funny that all these super rich fashion brands fell for it and lost a bunch of money, but ultimately there were designers who put their heart and soul into making these outfits, and I just feel kind of bad that they were grifted by the NFT cycle. I also feel that this is an appropriate time to bring up how absolutely horrible the shopping feature was on the Decentraland website. It was really hard to use as you were just kind of scrolling sideways forever, but I'll give them this. When you click on the items, you can see the prices in USD, which was a step up from my experiences looking into NFTs, which I'll admit that I did do in like 2021. I'm not above hype, but it was nice of them to include the price in dollars. So the hype from 2021 isn't the same as it used to be, but it's still there, and excited bag holders are preparing for another bull run on the NFT market, thanks in part to digital fashion. Like I said, this is coming back. But now, rather than making artists pay to mint their art as NFT pictures, like Bored Apes, people would put like independent artist stuff on there. Now, a new crop of 3D artists have been brought in to pay to mint their fashion works as NFT fashion. The NFT craze of 2021 saw a lot of innocent people sink their life savings into NFTs and lose a ton of money. And if we don't think a bit harder about the kind of things that we're promoting, it could very easily happen again. So why does any of this matter? Well, like I said, innocent people are gonna lose their money on this by throwing their money into digital Adidas shoes in the hopes that the price goes up to the moon with all the recent hype. Artists could lose money by spending time and money modeling and minting clothes that won't sell for more than what they paid. And the environment also suffers for all of this. I think that the first two concepts I talked about, being like 3D rendered fashion and edited pictures of fashion, are really awesome and such a cool way for like independent fashion artists to get into the fashion world. But when the NFTs start getting involved and an augmented reality future begins to be dreamt of, that's where I have a problem. Also, most of these outfits just look really fucking stupid. So for further information, I would recommend The Future is a Dead Mall by Folding Ideas. He talks a lot about this kind of like NFT financial crime grift, and I think that his style is really cool, and so I would definitely recommend checking him out. But other than that, I think that's where we're gonna end things today. So I am so grateful for all of you for being here and for hearing me out. This is gonna be a long one, but I'm really excited about it. So thanks for hanging out, and I'll see y'all in the next one.